Okay everyone, welcome to today's class. In this video, we're going to be looking at the basics of HTML and CSS. Now, a quick disclaimer before we get going, this video is for complete beginners, and if you're pretty much advanced in HTML and CSS, you might be seeing this as unnecessary, so you don't really have to watch it. And please, I strongly recommend you use your mobile phone to follow in this tutorial, so you're just getting the same result as we are over here. And if you don't know how to do that, I created a video showing you how to set up your coding environment on your mobile phone, and I'll be leaving the link to that video in the description, so you should be watching that after this one. Okay, so that being said, let's get into today's class. So here's what we're going to be creating in this video. I'm going to be showing you how to create this button over here, and we're going to be adding some effects just to make it look clickable, like this one over here and this over here. Okay, so let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is to create our HTML file. We're going to create a new HTML file. So for this, you click over here, and then let's just give it any name of a choice. I'm going to go with html2.html. Now you can give it any name of a choice. Okay, it already exists. Let me go with something else. Let's go with lesson. Okay, let's go with class 1.html. Okay, so we hit OK, and just like that, we got our HTML file. So now what we're going to do is to create our very first button, and I do recommend using a separate keyboard for this, just because a coding keyboard actually gives you a lot of functionalities. So I'm just going to switch mine to the code board, and yep, that's it. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is to create a button. So button, and then let's clear this out because we don't want our button to be disabled. And now we're going to put the text click me. So click me, and let's run this. Okay, so yeah, we got our button click me, but it doesn't actually do anything. Okay, so what we're going to do now is use CSS to actually add styles to it to make it look more like this, and add the other cool effects. There are actually three ways to write CSS code. You can either write it inside the HTML element or in the HTML file, or you can choose to write it in a separate file, a separate CSS file. And now we're going to be using the easiest method, which is writing it inside your HTML element, just because we are all beginners and we don't need something that is a bit confusing. Maybe later on in this video, I'm going to be showing you how you can write it in a separate file. Okay, so to write CSS inside our HTML, we're going to write style and then hit enter. Now what CSS basically does is that it gives styling to our web page, to our buttons, to our text, and all those things. Just makes them look cool, change the colors and the rest of them. So that's basically what CSS is doing. But in advanced CSS, you might see a lot of functionalities, but for the basic level of CSS just helps our website to look good. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is to target this button element by typing button and then curly brackets. So what we are basically doing is styling all the button in our web page. So let me just show you something real quick. So if you are to change the background color to red, and I like using red because it's quite easier, and now you can see our button is now red. So if I should change it to some other color, like let me go with blue, and you can see our button is blue. So that's basically how CSS works. So let's go and change it to this exact color which is on our project. Now I use a tool which is called the color picker to actually select specific color. So all you have to do is to get a screenshot of what it is you want to select the color. Let's check, yeah, this one, and then we're going to get a screenshot of this. Good, done. And then we're going to go over to the color picker. Sorry. Okay, nice. Get our screenshot and then zoom in this a bit. Yep. So we cut the color. So we're going to come over here and paste it. So now we got the exact color code of that particular color. Now if you should run this, you should see that it has the same color as the one in our project. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is to increase the height. So height, and let's set it to around 50 pixels. Now, if you don't know what pixels are just units of measurement in programming. Just the same way you have kilometers, meters, and centimeters. It's just the same thing with pixels. There are other units of measurement in programming, which we're going to be looking at more later. Okay, so now you just set it to 50 pixels, and then if you run this, you see that it's 50 pixels long. And now let's make it a bit spread out a bit wide. So we'll do the width, set the width, sorry, to around, let's go with 100 pixels px. Is a bit short. Let's go with 150. Yep, so it is nice. So the next thing we're going to do is to increase the font, like the writing inside our button. And we're going to, for this, we're going to type font size, and we're going to set it to, let's go with 10 pixels. And it's way too small. Let's go with 20. I think this is perfect. Yep. Now, if you look at the text in the original design, notice that the text inside it is kind of bold. So to fix this, we're going to type we're going to type font width and then bold. So this will basically make our text bold. And if you should run this, yeah, so the text is bold. Now, we're going to remove these lines around our button because it's not in our original design. To do this, we're going to type border, colon, and none. Yep, so the lines are off. Now the next thing we are going to do is to make the edges of our button a bit curvy, like the one which we have on our final design. So doing this, we'll write border radius, and then we're going to set it to, let's go with 5 pixels and run. Yep, I think it's good enough. Let's go with 10. Let's check 10. Let's go back with 5 pixels is gonna be good. So 5 pixels, and let's run. Yep, so this is great. So now we actually got the final design. Now what we're going to do is to add some effect to it. Now to add an effect to a button, we're going to be using a pseudo class which is called hover. Now type button and then colon and yep, curly brackets. Now what this basically does is that it adds extra style to our buttons whenever we hover across it. Now let me show you what I mean. Now if you should change the background color, if you write background color red, so whenever we hover across the button, it just adds extra style to our HTML like this. So whenever we hover across it, it just turns red, and when we are not hovering, it goes back to the original color. If we hover again, it turns red, and when we are not hovering, it goes back to the original color. So that's pretty much how the hover effect works. But we don't want it to hover. We actually want it to change the color whenever it's active, not hovering. So active and run. So this is pretty much like when you're active on the button, it turns red, and when you're not, it goes back to the original design. Now what you're going to do is to select a lighter color, not red, a lighter color of this one we cut. So I'm going to go back to my color picker and then mix it with a bit of white. So just little white. Yep, so this is great. Then we'll come back here and then we're going to paste that color. Paste, and now whenever we click on it, it just turns white, like it adds extra color to it. So yep, so yeah, this is pretty much it. But if you notice in our final design, whenever we click on it, it actually takes a bit of time. It does not just go all black in and out, something like that. It actually goes in smoothly and then comes out like kind of a smooth transition. Now to add that to our project, we're going to use the CSS property which is called transition. So transition. Now what this basically does is that it delays the amount of time a particular effect is supposed to happen. So if you should select the effect, let's go with the background color. That's the effect which we want to transition, and then let's set a specific time for it. Just to make this very visible, let me go with 5 seconds, which is way too much. We're going to raise that later, but let's go with 5 seconds, and let me go over here and make it a change of color so you see the effect. So now you see how it's being delayed, and then the moment we click out, it still takes a lot of time for it to go back. So this is a very long time to wait for a transition, and let's just go with something smoother. Let's go back. Yep, and let's go with 0.5 seconds. That's an ideal transition time limit. So when we click it, it just goes like that. Yep. Okay, so we created this one over here, and I think this is cool. So now let's go ahead and create the second transition. Now for this, we're going to go over here and create a new HTML button, and then we are going to give the text "don't click me" as the one in the final project. So don't click. Good. So if we should run this, you discover that it does exactly the same thing with this one over here, which is not proper. Now the reason why this happens is that when we apply this CSS style, we actually applied it to all the buttons in our HTML, and now that's not a good idea because not all buttons should have the same style. So a quick way to fix this is to give them a kind of a name, a means of identification. Now to do this, we'll have to use class, and then let's just give it any name of our choice. I'm going to go with BTN, which stands for button 1. And then we're going to give this one a class as well. So class, and then BTN button 2. And then instead of targeting all the class in our HTML, we're going to target just the BTN 1. So BTN TN1. And remember to add the dot in front of it to show that this is a class. So dot BTN1. And we're going to clean this too, and it's going to be dot btn1, then add a dot. Now you see that the styling is applied to just the btn1. So now let's go and start styling our btn2, which is our second button. So we'll type dot btn2, and then now what we can do is to copy all these styles because it actually has almost the same styling apart from the hover effect. So that's what we are going to be styling, but this one pretty much have the same effect. So paste, and now, but it does not actually have the same hover as this one. So now let's go and create the hover effect. So dot btn to active. So whenever we are active on this button, it actually changes color, does something else. Okay, so let's pretty much go over to our design and check what exactly the button does when we click it. So okay, so here's what this button does. When we click on it, the background goes black and the text goes yellow, and when we are not clicking on it, the whole thing goes back to its original position. So let's try and fix that in our code. So class 1, and yep. So what we are going to do, whenever we are clicking on the button, and besides, we are going to change it to hover because the effect is kind of steady. It's not when we are clicking away, it just go back to this original position. So we'll change it to hover, and I'm going to set the background color black. If we run, whenever we click it, it turns black. And the next thing we're going to do is to fix the text. So whenever we click the text, we want it to actually turn yellow. So color to change the text, and let's go over here and copy this color, which is the background color. Copy, then we'll come over here and paste it. So paste, and then whenever we click on this, the whole thing actually moves. It actually turns black, and when we are not clicking, it actually goes back to its original position. So congratulations, you just made it past class 1 of HTML and CSS full course. So here are some projects you should do on your own, and as soon as you're done with that, please leave a screenshot of your project in the Facebook group, and I'll happily preview that.